Good evening and welcome to Tribune Sports Live. I'm Zach Steele along with Chris Yow. Chris, our area teams go 1-2 this week.
They did. Not a great week for our guys, but you know that happens sometimes, especially when you're playing some good football teams.
Clay ran into a buzzsaw going up and taking on Minor. Very good team they ran into.
They really did, and it was obvious that Minor was the better football team, and that just happens sometimes. You know, you just find teams that you just can't get past.
Hewitt-Trussville keeps on keeping on. Easy victory over Huntsville sets them up very nicely for this ball game coming up this week against James Clemens.
They do. And Hewitt-Trussville, you know, they just keep going, and this week's going to be a lot of fun.
And finally, Pinson Valley loses a heartbreaker up at Gardendale on a last-second Hail Mary play. They really had control of the game in the fourth quarter, gave that control away, and Gardendale gets a much-needed area victory.
They did. Pinson, you know, they might have a complaint there, a little bit of controversy at the end of the game. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that game was probably two very, very well-matched teams.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about Hewitt and their big win over Huntsville.
Trussville Vision Care is now proud to offer sports vision training for athletes. This sports-specific training improves hand-eye coordination and reaction time. As a former college athlete, Dr. Steele knows how important perfect vision is to succeed on the athletic field. For athletes, 20/20 vision is not enough. Trussville Vision Care.
Welcome back. The Hewitt Huskies jumped out to a 42-6 halftime lead and cruised to a 49-26 victory over Huntsville. Chris, the Huskies just keep on keeping on.
They do. This offense, it just continues to get better and better each week. They find another gear each and every time they go out. They never disappoint, and that's what's been so impressive is that there hasn't been a letdown offensively yet.
Connor Adair, again, fantastic for the Huskies. 4 touchdown passes in the first half in this ball game. Over 530 yards, I believe, of total offense for the Huskies, and most of that's amassed by halftime.
Absolutely, and this offense just keeps on with that, and it's all because of the weapons they have on the outside with Noah Igbenogany. You've got Grayson Cash, you've got Elliot McElwain, you've got so many options everywhere on the field. It doesn't really matter, and here's the best part. This offensive line is just fantastic. They've protected Connor all season. They've opened up gaping holes for the running backs. This offense is probably one of the best I've seen in high school football, including Clay Chalk for the last couple of years.
So the Hewitt Huskies are now 9-0 for the first time since 1987. They play James Clemens for the area title this week. Huge ball game. The Huskies, it's going to be a huge crowd. It's going to be one of the biggest games in program history.
Absolutely, it will be, and I'm excited to see how that turns out because, you know, we've seen James Clemens once this year, and I really feel like Hewitt-Trussville has the upper hand here, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I'm really excited about this game Friday night.
Yeah, we'll preview that game later in the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about Clay Chalkville and their trip up to Minor.
Jefferson Memorial Funeral Home and Gardens is home-owned and operated by the Seal family. I've known Eddie Seal and his son Adam for over 25 years. They're community-oriented and, more importantly, good folks who know how to take care of people in their time of need. That's how Jefferson Memorial became Trussville's funeral home and cemetery. Jefferson Memorial is located at 1591 Gadsden Highway. You can call them at 322-0543. Before your need arises, let Jefferson Memorial family take care of your family.
Clay headed up to Minor Friday night, and they ran into a buzzsaw, Chris, as they lose this one 52-28.
Yeah, just not a good night defensively for the Cougars. Not a horrible night offensively, but, you know, that Minor offense, as we talked about last week, is just almost unstoppable. Fantastic job by everybody on their team. And Jerry Hood, you know, he had his team prepared, but there are some things you just can't prepare for. I mean, sometimes you're just out-athleted. And obviously the injury to Willie Miller in the first half didn't help. So it was just one of those nights that, you know, you just got beat.
Clay got behind 20-0 early in this ball game. Miller goes down with an injury, but then Clay makes a furious comeback to make this thing interesting right before the half.
They really did, and that last 20 seconds of the half was outrageous. Again, I thought we were playing arena football at one time. You see 3 touchdowns in the last 20 seconds, and Clay really had some momentum going in the second half. They score on the first drive of the second half, and then Minor just kills it all with the kick return, the ensuing kickoff. They return it for a touchdown, and the momentum's out the window again, and there goes Minor.
All right, so Clay sits at 5-3. They've got to go to an out-of-region game against Park Crossing this week. Where does Clay stand looking ahead into the playoffs?
At this point, Clay Chalkville has to understand that this game is very important as far as confidence is concerned this week. They've got a lot of growing up that they've done throughout the year. They just have to keep doing it. And depending on where they sit in the playoffs, I still think this team could really make some noise going into the 6A playoffs. I really do.
Well, experience is a very important thing when you get in the playoffs, and Clay has plenty of that. When we come back, we're going to talk about Pinson Valley and their trip up to Gardendale and their heartbreaking loss.
Trussville Vision Care is now proud to offer sports vision training for athletes. This sports-specific training improves hand-eye coordination and reaction time. As a former college athlete, Dr. Steele knows how important perfect vision is to succeed on the athletic field. For athletes, 20/20 vision is not enough. Trussville Vision Care.
Pinson Valley thought they had a victory in their hands late in the ball game against Gardendale, but a miracle Hail Mary play at the end of the ball game, Chris, and all of a sudden Gardendale snatches victory from the jaws of defeat.
They did, and this is one of those games that we knew was going to be tight. We knew that both teams were very good, and in the end it turned out to be exactly the game that we expected, and it was whoever had the ball last, and Gardendale made the play that had to be made to win the game.
And there was a little bit of controversy in this one we'll talk about. It appeared that Pinson had recovered a fumble that would have essentially iced the game late in this ball game with about 20-25 seconds left. The officials get together, they reverse their call, give the ball back to Gardendale, and next thing you know, there's the Hail Mary play.
And that happens sometimes. I'm a big proponent of officials. They get a lot of criticism from a lot of people, and I try to be fair as far as officials are concerned. And at this point, at least what I can say is they got together, they feel like they made the correct call, and that's all you can really do. As an officials crew, you just have to get together, talk about it, decide what really happened, and then when you get out of there, you make the call that you feel is the right call, and both teams have to deal with it.
Well, it sets up an interesting scenario coming up for Pinson as they take on Carver this week, and really they have to win this ball game to get in the playoffs.
It's a must-win situation. The winner of this game, the Carver-Pinson game, will go to the playoffs, and that makes a big difference in the seeding for the other two teams as well. So this week is huge in the playoff scenario, no matter what happens with Clay at Park Crossing and with Carver at Pinson.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that elimination game when we come back, and we'll have predictions for our other ball games as well. We'll be back.
Jefferson Memorial Funeral Home and Gardens is home-owned and operated by the Seal family. I've known Eddie Seal and his son Adam for over 25 years. They're community-oriented and, more importantly, good folks who know how to take care of people in their time of need. That's how Jefferson Memorial became Trussville's funeral home and cemetery. Jefferson Memorial is located at 1591 Gadsden Highway. You can call them at 322-0543. Before your need arises, let Jefferson Memorial family take care of your family.
Welcome back, and we'll get right into predictions, Chris. We'll start with Clay traveling to Park Crossing. Your thoughts on that ball game?
Well, this ball game is really impressive to me because Park Crossing is 8-1 on the season. But here's the kicker. The only team that they've beaten with a winning record is Sidney Lanier, who they beat 13-10 last week. Sidney Lanier is also just 5-3 on the season. So this is not a team that has beaten a lot of powerhouse programs. And I feel like Clay Chalkville they've bounced back every time. They bounce back after Pinson. They bounce back each and every time that they find themselves on the floor. They get right back up, just like a champion does. And I believe this week they do that again. They win 41-40 on the road.
Well, I'm going to go with Park Crossing here, a very similar score. I'm going to go 45-38 Park Crossing, and my only concern is Miller going to play in this ball game? And he's a big, important piece for this team. If he can't go, I don't know that the Clay offense is good enough to match and make up for some of the deficit that they have on defense right now. All right, let's go Carver at Pinson Valley. Carver comes into this ball game 4-4.
They do, and Carver is very athletic. As we saw against Clay Chalkville, if you let them hang around, they're just athletic enough to beat you. And you have to really play your best game. At this point, it's all going to come down to the Pinson defensive line that we've talked about all season long. Will they be able to play their assignment to contain Carver's athletes in the pocket and on the outsides? If they're able to do that, I feel like Pinson wins this game. I give them a win, 31-23, and they make the playoffs.
I like Pinson in this one as well. Very close again, just like you predicted. I like Pinson 33-27 for all the reasons you just said. Okay, finally, the big one. James Clemens comes down to take on Hewitt-Trussville. It's going to be a huge crowd in this ball game. The big stadium over off of I-59 is going to be rocking. Your thoughts on this one?
My thoughts are that James Clemens is coming into this game with a little bit of a swagger because they did defeat Hewitt-Trussville in the playoffs last season, despite there being a wet field and Hewitt not having Zach Thomas. A lot of factors went into that game, but that still gives them a little bit of the swagger coming into this one. I feel like they're going to come in and they're going to play well, but I just don't think there's any stopping this Hewitt-Trussville offense, and that defense is going to be just as good. I think you'll see this one end up in a high-scoring affair. I've got Hewitt 50, James Clemens 37.
Well, I agree with you that James Clemens is going to come in with a swagger, but two things are different between last season and this season. Number one is James Clemens' defense is not nearly as good as it was last season, and Hewitt's offense is light years ahead of where it was in that playoff game with all the injuries that they had. Hewitt stayed relatively healthy this year. They've had some bumps and bruises, but they really look like they're clicking on all cylinders right now. I don't see James Clemens being able to match points with them. I like Hewitt in this ballgame 56-41.
I tend to agree.
All right, well, that's our show for tonight. We'll be back next week, and we'll talk to you a little bit more about these ball games, and we'll talk a little bit more about playoff scenarios. For Chris Yow, I'm Zach Steele. Good night, everybody.